Hi you guys, what is going on? Iveco here, and today I want to welcome you to episode 3 of Make It Great Again. Today's episode we're going to be looking at XCOM 2. Now for those of you that don't have a clue what XCOM 2 is, let me explain it to you. XCOM 2 is a turn-based strategy game. It rolls with the sci-fi theme of aliens versus humans, so the stereotypical scene of aliens invade Earth and your job is to defend Earth from aliens. You are basically this special group called the XCOM Project, and you have advanced weaponry and advanced soldiers, and your job is to fight off these aliens and make sure that you protect Earth and all of its civilians from the alien invasion. So, to give you some background on XCOM, the first game came out in 1994 with XCOM UFO Defense in the US, and in the UK this was called XCOM Enemy Unknown. The next game to come out was the XCOM Enemy Unknown 2012 reboot, which gave the franchise a huge amount of popularity and kept a highly devout and loyal fan base. And even some of the people that played the game in 94 that are still retained to this day are still playing XCOM 2012 and XCOM 2. We now come to XCOM 2, which is the premise of this video. This was released February 4th, 2016. Now to look at the developer and the publisher. So Firaxis is the developer for this game. They are also known for other turn-based strategy games like the Civilization series. So another big market player is Civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization, and these guys have the run in it. So they really do have some very good turn-based strategy games. We have, as a publisher, we have 2K Games, who also do like basketball, NBA basketball games is probably their most prominent thing, and also the WWE wrestling games. So 2K is a pretty prominent publisher. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at the good side of XCOM 2, the bad side of XCOM 2, the solutions for the set problems, and whether or not this game can be made great again. But right, without any further ado, let's get into the good bits of XCOM 2. Okay, now to look at some of the good things for XCOM 2 and what good stuff it has going for it. And one of the first things it has to have is one of the best turn-based strategies on the market at the moment. It definitely only has two real competitors. The first one is the Civilization series, which some can debate is on a downward spiral at the moment because they've had a couple of hit and miss moments this year and last year with Civilization Beyond Earth. Although some saying the game is improving, but a lot of people are still worried about what's going to happen with Civ 6. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep their foothold in the turn-based strategy market. And the other one is Total War, which was on a downward spiral until Warhammer came out. And Warhammer has kind of reignited the series and made it a hell of a lot better than what they've been doing as of late. So you've definitely got one main competitor in Total War Warhammer. And we do have some smaller titles like GalCiv 3 on the way and coming up. So they're definitely going to be ones to watch for as well, because the turn-based strategy market is starting to heat up. We've also got Endless Legends and Endless Spaces, other two games to go through as potential competitors. Maybe not as big at the moment, but definitely can get bigger over the future. Now the next point is compelling storyline compared to the 2012 version of XCOM. XCOM 2's story I can have no complaints with. It's a great story. It has a great it wasn't a linear story like XCOM 2012. XCOM 2012, which was the reboot, kind of had a story of you have to do this, then you do this, then you make sure that this is done to do that, and then onwards and onwards and onwards and then ending. Whereas XCOM 2 kind of still retains it a tiny bit, except you can either do that or you can do that. If I do that, that, and that happens. If I do this, then this, and this will happen. And then you kind of go two ways out, and then you can come in and come towards the ending, which is another point I have to bring up here. The ending on XCOM 2012 left many people unsatisfied. They have not done this in XCOM 2. XCOM 2's ending basically ties the bow on a neatly wrapped present that is the campaign of XCOM 2, and it's definitely good to see that they've learned from their mistakes from XCOM 1. Now, it is also another thing to mention that it is the only turn-based strategy to really have a proper campaign or a proper story. If you mention those competitors of the Total War franchise and the Civilization franchise, they don't really have stories. They just have set campaigns and you play as set factions. They don't have any unique story to them. Yes, they may have a couple of cutscenes, but it's really not that much to them compared to what XCOM 2 does for a campaign. Okay, so the next point is there has been a significant, God, can't get my words out, graphics and sound overhaul from XCOM 1. So there has definitely been a massive upgrade in the graphics and the overall sounds without having buggy sounds and whatnot and issues. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. There's issues with optimization and there's problems with that. Don't worry. I haven't forgot. I've had my own issues. We'll get to that. There's definitely been an upgrade over XCOM 1, which is good to see. Okay, so the next point is there is a wider variety of mission types on the new game. On XCOM 2, there is a lot more mission variety than XCOM 1. On XCOM 1, the only ones I can really recount are eliminate all enemies, defuse the bomb, and rescue a VIP. Those are the only 3 missions you used to get on the original XCOM. Whereas on XCOM 2, we have hack the data center, go and retrieve a data vial, protect the uplink, protect the civilians, protect civilian casualties in retaliation missions, protect the oh god, I can't remember its name right now. That one eludes me. And you also get kill/capture HVTs, rescue your own soldiers. There's a huge variety of more missions than what was present in XCOM, in the original XCOM. It's definitely a great thing, and it's a great feature now. Okay, so the next point is there's a much bigger selection of procedurally generated maps on XCOM 2, unlike the repetitive nature of XCOM 1's maps. Now, while they are set in the same kind of areas and whatnot, they do have the same scenery in certain maps on XCOM 2. What they do differently is there's different layouts. There's never the same layout on a set map. You can go into a map knowing that there's not the same layout. There's going to be different building placements. There's going to be different cover placements. So every single time you can't go in there thinking, oh, I'll just move him there, him there, him there, and I'll put them on Overwatch, and that's it, done. Hey, Bob's your uncle. You have to actually think it through, which is definitely a good thing to see that they haven't continued with the repetitive maps from XCOM 1. Definitely an upgrade. Now, another gripe that a lot of people had with the original XCOM was the movement system, and pathfinding was really bad. Now, I'm delighted to say that XCOM 2 has really got an improved movement system. The waypoint system has made pathfinding significantly improved. It means now that we don't have any of those stupid issues where they take unnecessary movement tiles, which can then screw you out of doing something else, or potentially get one of your soldiers killed. So, I'm really glad to say that they've improved the pathfinding over XCOM 1. Okay, the next idea is concealment. Concealment is a valuable addition to the guerrilla-style warfare of XCOM 2. It adds a new layer of strategy to the game. You have the whole, before you get into a combat with the aliens, there's the whole dealing with the aliens, fighting aliens and whatnot, but now there's the concealment phase. There's, how can I set up the best ambush possible to kill the most enemies so I don't have to fight them and maybe risk losing a soldier and whatnot. So I definitely like the new concealment system. I think it's a valuable addition to the game. Next point being, Overwatch system has been improved from the 2012 version. We don't have that stupid thing where if one enemy triggers Overwatch, then all 6 of your squad members will fire. Instead, on XCOM 2, we have one after another. So if that enemy gets killed, then the rest of the squad retain their Overwatch, which I definitely like a lot more than the previous system. And for my final point, the campaign map has improved massively. It's much more visually pleasing versus the XCOM 2012 holo map. And the fact that it also adds risk-reward missions, so you can do supply raids, you can do soldier rescues, you can do scanning for intel, scanning for raid sites and stuff like that. It adds another layer of strategy to the game. What XCOM 2 has seemed to do today is take its predecessor, and it's also added in extra layers of strategy. So you have to think the risk-reward system of, should I go and do that raid? What happens if we have a retaliation strike if we do that raid and my whole squad is injured? Stuff like that, you have to weigh up which one's better and which one's worse. And it also plays into the fact that you have to set up resistance networks. You have to think, well, is it a good idea to set up here? Will this get me access to here, here, and here? Or is it better to set up over there? It's definitely added in more strategy to the game, which is definitely not a bad thing at all. But yeah, this has been the good section, so let's go and have a look at some of the problems of XCOM 2. Okay, now to look at the bad things for XCOM 2 and what are withholding this game from becoming a great game. Now the first issue is a really big issue, and it's still not been fixed since the beginning of the game, and it is poor optimization from the launch, and it's still not been fixed 4 months in. Now, I run this game on Ultra, but I also have the susceptibility to having frame drops, I'm having crashes, I'm having freeze-ups. I can't have anti-aliasing on because that causes complete lockups in the cutscenes or also in the loading screens. It's a problem, it's a real basic problem that needs to be addressed. It needs to be fixed in a patch. I don't know why it wasn't fixed in the hotfix that came out like a week later after the game's launch. If they managed to fix the broken save game feature at the end of the final mission, but they still haven't rectified this issue with graphics, which is somewhat more problematic. You know, they definitely need to get onto this. This is a real big issue at the moment, and it's a very irritating one. Okay, so for the next point, the turn-based timer is a debatable gameplay feature. What this means is if you haven't played XCOM 2, I'll explain it to you. On certain missions, when you rescue Advent VIPs, or if you go and you got to take out a VIP, you've got to extract a vial or something out of a set area, you will usually have what's called a turn timer. You will have 12 turns to complete said objective and then get out, or if in the case of if you're doing a vial mission, you have 5 to 8 turns to get to a container, hack this container, retrieve the sample analysis or whatever the hell that you've got to retrieve, and if you don't do it within that time, mission failed, game over, bye-bye. You have to kind of stop the timer by doing that. Now, a lot of people do not like this feature, just primarily on the fact because it's such a stark contrast to where there was no rushing in XCOM 1. There was no feeling of you had to rush. There was the occasional mission, there was the bomb plant mission, which came up maybe once or twice a campaign where you had a bit of a timer to push against. But most of the time in XCOM 1, you played a really passive style of gameplay. But in XCOM 2, it kind of feels like you're on a timer, you're on a rush, and this forces players to adapt to new tactics and strategies, which some people don't like. They don't like adapting to the new tactics and strategies. It's a debatable feature that some agree with, some disagree with. It can go either way. My personal opinion, I like it. I mean, I do like having to adapt my strategies and tactics and techniques based on time constraints. I think it's a nice feature myself, but some people also think it's bad, hence why it's here. Okay. Next point is the game is not new player friendly, and it really isn't new player friendly. Now, the XCOM franchise period has been renowned for a steep learning curve, and it is an unforgiving game. When I first picked up the game, XCOM 2012, I was playing Iron Man off the bat because, I thought I was hot shit, and I kind of found out the hard way, yeah, I'm not that good. So it can be really off-putting. Even on the lower difficulties, the game is still very hard, and people put countless hours into customizing their characters on XCOM 2 just to see them get their heads blown off by a muton or by a psionic trooper or stuff along those lines. They get annoyed by it and they drop the game. So it is a kind of a bad thing that it's still really got that kind of steep learning curve and whatnot, but I think it's one of those things that is integral to the XCOM experience. It is a hard game, it is a challenging game, and some of the satisfaction is that when you defeat said game, it gives you that satisfaction. Okay, so for the next point, there's still no update to multiplayer. The multiplayer is still as bare bones as the 2012 XCOM reboot. There's still no real upgrade to multiplayer, and I think they've missed an opportunity with this. I definitely think that multiplayer could be taken somewhere, and that we could get something out of this. I think it would be a great idea for them to update the multiplayer, having some more features to it, because I think a lot of people would start to play multiplayer. I could definitely see myself, if it had a few more features, picking up multiplayer and facing off against friends and whatnot. I definitely think it would be a good idea, and they need to maybe work on it. So no update on the multiplayer since 2012 is definitely an issue. Okay, so for the next point is more questionable gameplay decisions. The first one being critical hits behind heavy or full cover. What this is the full shielded cover. What you'll find sometimes is that you will get critically hit behind cover. You're always told on XCOM to get behind heavy cover if you can find it. But then you play the game and you end up getting critical hitted behind cover, and you're kind of like, well, what the fuck was the point of heavy cover? Now, I can understand this happening maybe once or twice and there not being that there was being issues with, like, oh, it was a lucky shot, oh, okay, that's one off, I can understand that. But the problem is it happens too many times in these missions. You get it happening too many times, and it's a real problem. It's a really, really big problem, and I am really need hope that they fix it. The other problem is no penalty for killing civilians on liberation missions. So you end up doing liberation missions, which are basically protect the resistance from being attacked by the Advent faction, which is the enemy faction in the game. But the problem is, you can kill civilians on there, even though you're supposed to be protecting them, and nothing happens. If you'd done that in the XCOM 2012, there would be huge repercussions. Even in the original 1994 version, there was huge repercussions if you killed a civilian. If you killed any civilians, you'd have huge reputation hits. You'd have people pulling out the XCOM project in 2012 and whatnot. But there seems to be no actual mechanic that says, oh, you killed a civilian, a retaliation strike? Well, good job. We needed to thin the herd anyway. I definitely think there needs to be some sort of penalty. Now, some of you may complain that it adds the difficulty, but let's be honest, you are saving humanity, not blowing them up with the plasma or acid grenades when you're trying to burn the armor off one of those annoying little sectopods. Right, next point is avatar timer progresses too quickly. Now, this is another gameplay issue. The early to mid-game avatar timer progresses way too quickly. It can make Iron Man incredibly difficult. Now, I did say that XCOM is renowned for heavy difficulty, but I feel that in this, this timer is way too quick. It moves up way too quickly, and it's too much of an issue. It literally, you have to micromanage, there's no doubt about that. But the extent, because of how quickly this timer is, that you have to micromanage on the upper difficulties, almost makes it to the extent that one mistake can cost you the game. Even moving accidentally from a scan to Resistance HQ instead of going to a mission can cost you a game, which is hours of gameplay. Mods do alleviate this issue, however, it still doesn't feel like it's enough. It really doesn't feel like it's still enough to be able to call it and say that it's kind of fair. But anyways, next point. Some soldier class abilities feel useless. The sniper gunslinger tree being a big one. There's also too many situational perks, like rangers do extra range, extra damage to flanked enemies. Stuff like that is not really helpful, but there's other classes that have much more universally helpful perks. So, for example, on the Grenadiers, you have the Shredder perk that comes into, I think it's the second rank in, which is Lieutenant. You'll be able to shred armor with your cannon attacks, and this can be helpful throughout the game. It's pretty much mandatory to have a Grenadier with you just so you can shred down higher level units' armor in the late game. So, I think that they need to address the perks and make them a bit more universally helpful for the game. Now, my next issue as well is the gremlins could have had so much more to them. Now, the specialists in XCOM 2, which is kind of like your tech guys, your computer guys, they can hack with what's called these gremlins, which are basically these flying little robots that you can send in to hack certain networks to get bonuses, or they can retrieve the objectives on timed missions. Now, there's a lot of issues with it. For example, the hacking stat only goes to 200, but you still have hacking boosts in the late game. And there's a cap on how much hacking skill you can get. I don't know whether this is to limit the chances of getting something, but you can have like literally 200 hack score, which is the highest possible thing, and then you could be coming up against a sectopod which has maybe 100, 120, so 80 to 100 skill less, and you still find yourself completely bugging out and it's completely screwing up. Now, it could be RNG, but you have to take into account that some of the statistics in there should come into play, and it doesn't really feel like it's coming into play. So I definitely think they need to address this issue with the gremlins. Okay, so for another issue that still doesn't really seem to have been fixed since launch, the final mission, no matter what difficulty you do it on, is still Iron Man. If you have a random game crash, or if you have issues during it, or you have to switch it off or whatnot, you will find yourself going back to the beginning. There's no real way that you can save it, and it's still very problematic that you can't save it and you can't make adjustments. So if your game crashes, for example, and you're at the end of the mission, it will take you back to the beginning of the mission. This needs to be rectified, as well as the optimization issues, as soon as possible. Okay, so now for another gameplay issue is no late game enemy variety for Advent enemies. It's just elite troopers, elite lancers, elite freaking officers. There's no variety. Now, I do concede that the alien hunters somewhat helps this, but there's no real appearances of these alien bosses in the late game. You don't see these bosses rocking up because you have to deal with them usually in the early game. But it's nice to see that alien hunters do add to that variety, but I hope that they add in more variety. Now, mods is again alleviating this, but I really feel that they should be adding in more variety of enemies. Okay, now for the final point of the bad side, I'm going to really address the elephant in the room, which is the DLCs. The DLCs for XCOM 2 so far, I feel, have been hit and miss. There's been some good, there's been some bad, and it's just kind of been a on-off for Firaxis. So on the first DLC, we had the issue that many people argue that modders did a better job than the first DLC. That the customization pack that Firaxis offered was under par, basically, to what modders could do. And it was kind of really weird stuff. Like, I used some of the stuff, don't get me wrong, and it's not too bad. But you have stuff like gothic gear and whatnot that you'd never expect to see on a soldier. I was hoping for more realistic things, but even in that, I was kind of hoping for maybe something else rather than a customization pack, but you know, we got what we got, and we've got to deal with it now. But I think the first DLC, in terms of the hit and the miss scale, was a big fat miss. So for DLC 2, we had Alien Hunters, which, as I mentioned earlier, adds in a bunch of new game bosses and new enemies to take on, and combat for new armor and new items. So I think the Alien Hunters was quite a good DLC. It was a welcomed addition to the game. It does add difficulty, and it makes the game a lot more interesting with the new suits of armor and whatnot. It is quite challenging, don't get me wrong. I remember a couple of days ago on stream going there and fighting the Queen Berserker, and I was like, King Berserker, sorry, and I was like, oh Jesus. Getting a whole squad basically getting their asses whooped by one big ass boss was not a pleasing experience, but definitely a fun one in terms of a challenge. So I kind of held off. This video was supposed to come out earlier. However, when I was going to release this, we had Shen's Last Gift come out, and I wanted to give this a full review of DLC. So I definitely think Shen's Last Gift could go either way as a hit and a miss. I do like the items that are in it. I do like the new class of the Spark Robot. It is a nice addition. It's a unique addition. The perks and whatnot do feel really good. And they've actually taken the advice of not having useless abilities. On the Spark, you can go down either tech tree, and it actually feels like it's a worthwhile to go down either tech tree. You can build it to a set style of play. If you want him to play aggressive, you can go down the War Machine tree. Whereas if you want to play more passive-ish with the robot, you can go down the other tree. So I definitely do like it. However, it doesn't really add anything in except one extra game mission in the soldier class. And it's kind of like, to be honest, it kind of feels like these DLCs have been pork scratchings of content. They've been small little nippets of content that have helped the game. Don't get me wrong, stuff like Alien Hunters and Shen's Last Gift, and debatably the first DLC, customization DLC, have added a bit of spice to the game, but it's not really enough. It doesn't feel like enough. What I think they need to do is an expansion, which is a content-heavy release of items. So, like how XCOM 2012 had Enemy Within, and that brought in an absolute ton of content, two new soldier classes, using the meld, being able to augment your soldiers, stuff along those lines. I definitely think if they had a real piece of meaty content like that they could make this game so much more tremendous than what it is now. But right, that has been all the problems that I have gone over in this. I'm going to go and have a look at some of the solutions to alleviate these problems. Okay, now to look at some of the solutions that need to be addressed for the problems and how these solutions will make the game great again. So, my primary one is that optimization needs to be done as soon as possible. These optimization issues, graphical glitches, not having anti-alias, not being able to have anti-aliasing on for freeze up, random game crashes and whatnot, all need to be addressed. They should have been addressed much earlier. However, there's no point about talking about the past. Let's look at the present, in the sense that we need to we need to make sure that these issues are addressed now and they get done, because they're not great. They're issues that should have been fixed, and hopefully once the optimization issues get fixed, then other issues will not be as blatantly obvious or evident. Okay, so for the next solution, the final mission needs a save feature, so that if you do have random game crashes, I mean, if they fix the optimization, this doesn't even need to be a solution. If there's no issues with game crashes and whatnot, then maybe the final mission doesn't need a save feature and that you go through the whole thing on its own. But with the thing at the moment, with the game having these optimization issues, there's no way that the final mission can't have a save feature unless you want it to constantly reset and whatnot. So I definitely think that this needs to be addressed, that they need to have a final save feature. Okay, for the next point, and this is going into gameplay, they need to reevaluate some of the gameplay decisions, so they need to tweak some of the values. My main one being critical hits happening when you're behind heavy cover. Now, I don't mind the occasional shot from behind heavy cover hitting you for a critical. That's fine. You can say, okay, that's a lucky shot, that's a good shot. Because we have lucky shots against the aliens as much as they get lucky shots against us. But it happens too often at this point. You end up seeing, like, near enough 3 times a mission, you'll end up getting critical hit behind heavy cover. It happens too many times, and then it results in screwing up a campaign, potentially. Especially if you're on those upper difficulties that I mentioned, when your best soldiers that you need are out of commission because of stupid gameplay crap like this. So I definitely think they need to be having a look at that and maybe toning it down a little bit. I'm not saying take out critical hits behind heavy cover by any stretch at all, but they need to address the issue at the moment because it's happening too regularly. In terms of the speed of the Avatar project, I've said this is a debatable one. Maybe have a look at tweaking the settings on that to a more amicable position for the higher difficulties, but also keeping it challenging on the lower difficulties. I think it needs to be slowed down, personally, a tiny bit for the early to mid-game. And then, once it's tweaked a little bit, this will help the higher difficulties, and it will just make the game overall better, in the sense that it gives you a lot more focus on other things, as well as not having to constantly worry about the timer going up way too quickly. I mean, obviously we want there to be the threat of the Avatar project looming over you, but it's at the point at the moment where it's too much of a threat in your head, and it can basically ruin campaigns with how quickly it advances in the early to mid-game. So I definitely think maybe doing some tweaks to the timing and the speed of the Avatar project advancement in game time is an idea. Also, maybe looking at the timer for retreats for missions, maybe actually adding an extra turn or two. Now, some people debate about whether or not it should even be in the game, but it looks like it's here to stay. So if I was to do anything, I'd say maybe add in maybe an extra turn or two for the upper difficulties, because it kind of makes it unfeasible a lot of the time for some of these missions. So I definitely think looking at that as a thing would definitely be an idea. Okay, for the next point, it would be they need to have a more complex tutorial for welcome new players to the franchise. Now, I do have an issue with the tutorial itself. I find it very interesting how Firaxis made near enough a 2-hour tutorial just so that could get you past the Steam refund marker for new players so that they couldn't get a Steam refund. Quite interesting, that maneuver, really. A bit of a cheeky maneuver in my books as well. But I think there needs to be a more complex tutorial for new players. So if we're going to welcome people into the franchise as new players, there needs to be more breakdowns of certain things. There needs to be a detailed guide maybe of what certain things are, what certain abilities are, what things you can do. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe like a glossary of some sort where it goes over helpful hints and tips, maybe just stuff along those lines. I don't think it needs to be like in a Bradford command saying we have to save the civilians, commander, or whatnot, because Bradford is already fucking annoying as he is at this point. Like, it feels like they went over the top on the Bradford voice recordings and just like, quick, chuck them all in, you know? I definitely think that they could work on doing that. Okay, for the next point is one that I keep bringing up a lot in these Make It Great Again videos, but it is such an integral part. Work more closely with the modding community. Now, it's such a great thing that Firaxis and the XCOM franchise as a whole is blessed with such a strong and motivated modding community. We have people like Long War Mods who created the amazing Long War mod for XCOM 2012. We have a Steam workshop near enough filled with mods. We have a Nexus website that's filled with mods. We have near enough over 6,000 mods at present time for mods that you can choose from, and this is absolutely amazing. It shows that the modding community are absolutely committed. Now, I think Firaxis needs to work back in turn with them, maybe helping with a little bit of the compatibility issues, stuff along those lines. So, for example, my key one being, as you'll see in this video here, is one of the mods that I like to use is the increased squad size mod, which a lot of people like to use, where they increase their squad sizes to higher amounts. So maybe instead of the 6-man squad, they like 8 or stuff along those lines. So I think what they should do is maybe be able to have a feature or maybe make an adjustment in, well, for starters, the loading screen, as you can see here, it's kind of like literally cramped in and you can't see your back right soldiers. Now, I mean, not looking at your soldiers is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of confusing when you've got names that are out of line for what soldiers it is. And if you've got like a bunch of reserve rookies, which you will do in the higher difficulties when you are losing a lot of soldiers to injury and death, it's kind of a bit confusing. Also, as well, when you deploy with a squad over the size limit of 6, you have a lot of 2 soldiers, or the 1 soldier if it's over 1 squad size limit, will come in what's known as the T position. They'll come in basically with looking like the letter T. It's little things like that if they can address, that would definitely make this game so much better. You may say it's only visual stuff, but it's still those little visual touches that could make this game so much better with the mods. Also, the cosmetic DLCs and whatnot, maybe making them a bit more compatible and working with the game and whatnot. It's definitely be interesting to see. The other one being maybe something like the strong rifle. The strong rifle is a weapon that replaces the minigun for grenadiers, and it is definitely an interesting and viable weapon. Maybe having a look at implementing that into the full game. I know it's quite popular mod to have the strong rifle in, so maybe consider putting that into the main game. Maybe having it so that you can vote in items, so like a Killing Floor 2 system. Like I said in my Killing Floor 2 system, they have a vote your favorite mods to go into the full game. So maybe have that as a feature, that you can have these stuff like the strong rifle, the carbines, the long war mod, the Elite Centurion, long war mod studios mods and whatnot going into the main game, and having them voted in so that they are completely compatible and you don't have to rely on them as mods and worry about the whole issue of them not being compatible with others and breaking. I definitely think that would be a very nice addition. So working with the modding community is definitely a big one for me. I think it can only be anything but beneficial to Firaxis and also the modding community in themselves. My next suggestion, keep it on the line of the modding community, is maybe having competitions like competitions for cosmetic items to put into the game. So maybe having a collection of, maybe having hosting a competition for cosmetic items and saying, right, we want to get the best from the community and we want you guys at XCOM 2, all of XCOM 2 players to vote on their favorite cosmetic items, and maybe these can be brought into the game. Maybe that it does it like that, because what this does is show that you care about the said modding community, and it also motivates the modding community to make more content. And all that this modding content is doing is prolonging your game. It is keeping people on your game, which means you are probably going to make more sales if you haven't already from more DLC. And if you make more DLC that's worthwhile, you're going to make more money from that because of these modders. Now, I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation between modders obviously making Firaxis money, but a lot of people on XCOM 2 now play with a heavy amount of mods, and it's one of the reasons that they keep playing this game. So I definitely think looking at working with the modding community with a much more closer union. Now, don't get me wrong, there is like the Long War mods and Steam Workshop and Nexus are evidence of this, but keep working with them. It's definitely helping your brand and your game in itself. But anyway, that's the bit of the community. Now, my final point on solutions is maybe tidying the mod manager UI up. It can become chaotic with multiple mods. Now, I only use cosmetic mods and the squad size increase mod myself, so I'm not really a casualty of this. However, I know many people that use a whole array of mods. We're talking up to 15 to 20 mods, which never thought I'd see, really. 15 to 20 mods working in harmony together without going mental and crashing. Now, with these mods, the UI can look absolutely chaotic. Now, I probably don't think it was designed for this, but where we are so blessed with such a vast array of mods for this game, maybe looking at tidying the UI up a bit more, making it a bit more, neater, basically a bit neater, so it's more helpful to go and find that one specific mod you're looking for and to enable it or disable it and whatnot. So tidying the mod manager would definitely be nothing but beneficial as well. But right, this has been the solutions to how I think that XCOM 2 can be made great with some of these solutions. I'm going to give my final thoughts on whether or not XCOM 2 can be made great again. Okay, now for my final thoughts and to summarize whether or not I think XCOM 2 can be made great again. Now, don't get me wrong, XCOM 2 is a great game. It is a great game, but it still has some lingering issues. It's much better than its predecessor of XCOM 2012 in terms of polish and refinement. And also for providing that complete XCOM experience, XCOM 2 completely trumps 2012. The main point being the storyline. The storyline is so much better than what XCOM 2012 was. We actually have a satisfying ending to XCOM 2, and it actually ties up the neatly tied bow that is the campaign. It feels like a satisfying ending. It kind of makes you go, oh, okay, well, it doesn't leave you with any cliffhangers and whatnot that you kind of think, well, that kind of sucks. There definitely needs to be some addressing of issues in terms of gameplay with the critical hits behind cover, and the optimization issues that have not been solved for 4 months are holding this back from making this an outstandingly great game. But apart from that, the rest of the gameplay is pretty solid. There isn't many issues that I can go over and say that they're a huge problem in terms of gameplay, apart from the critical hits behind heavy cover and some other stuff like the turn timer. The gameplay is quite solid. Now, I hope that they do work with the community some more and they start working a lot more in conjunction with the community. Further mod support is only going to be more than beneficial to Firaxis and 2K as a publisher. I mean, we can use XCOM 2012's Long War mod as a case example here of how drastically mods can affect the game. You saw a huge amount of people start replaying XCOM XCOM 2012 once the Long War mod came out, because it added in new challenges, new difficulty, and a ton of new content. And you can argue that it actually extended the XCOM's game lifecycle as well. So, with the community that we've got, we really are blessed with XCOM to have such a good community of people that are constantly uploading mods. You have to bear in mind, we're near enough coming up only to the 5-month mark. We're not even half a year with this game being out, and we near enough have near enough to 6,000, if not coming over that mark, 6,000 total mods between the Steam Workshop and the Nexus. That's a crazy amount of extra content added to the game that you can go and explore, and this will help increase the longevity of the game. But yeah, overall, optimization, work with the modding community, sort out some gameplay issues. This game could be absolutely outstanding. But right, that is going to be the end of the video right here. So I hope everybody has enjoyed it. Make sure if you like the video, give it a like. If you feel like you want to see some more of this sexy ass content, go give the channel a subscribe. Make sure to check out that Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook links in the description below. That Game Wisp for the early access and subscription benefits. But yeah, I am gonna sign off now. So thank you everybody for watching. I've been Mr. Iveco, and you've been you. Peace out, guys.
Say that it feels right.